Hi there everybody, welcome back to Flower Club with me, Penny, your host. We've got a really fun, little bit tropical design for you today. Here's a little sneak peek of what we are making today. Let's get cracking, let's see what's in the box. We have some gorgeous Singapore orchids, beautiful snapdragons again, they're one of my favorites. Had to include them again, stunning. Lovely anthurium, just got one stem, and then a little Monstera leaf. Beautiful, fresh, a little bit tropical. Let's begin. What we're going to start with is prep as per usual. Start with our snapdragons, just gonna prep them as we normally would. Easiest way to open them, just rip along the seam. Woo, plastic off. And then we're just gonna take all of the foliage off below where the blooms are starting. I like to take it all off just because it creates a little bit of a cleaner look. Gonna cut them out so that we don't risk popping off any of the little blooms as we're pulling it out because they can be a little bit delicate. Cut a little bit of tape and they'll all come with these little water vials on them, these individual water vials. You can just pop them off, keep them if you want. And these don't really require that much prep. But one thing about orchids like this is that they can actually drink through their blooms as well as their stems. So if for any reason, if you wanted to give them invigorate them a little bit, give them a bit of a refresh, you can actually fill your kitchen sink or a bucket, whatever you want to do, submerge them entirely in the water for, 30 minutes, an hour, just to give them a really nice drink kind of throughout their entire bloom stems, the whole shebang. That's a little hot tip. And your orchids will actually come with a couple of pieces of this palm. We'll keep that, we'll use that. And then anthuriums they'll come with one of these too. Doesn't really need anything. And then we have our little Monstera. To design into today, we're just going to use our trusty white ceramic vase. And I'm going to use the same technique as last week where we grid the vase with some tape. And that just creates a nice sturdy grid. If you're using a lot of foliage like we've done in weeks previous, that kind of creates the grid for us. So I'm making a little bit of an artificial structured grid in the vase, which means that the flowers won't flop side to side as much, keeps them in place. The way we do this, I'm just going to use regular schmegular sticky tape. If you're using something really thick like this, you can cut into small strip. If we were making something for an event that you're having, we'd use pot tape, which is kind of specialized tape like this that we stick on the vase. But really, when you're at home, you can kind of just use whatever you have on hand. This is kind of what we're going to be creating, but just with this, easy. So what we do, I fill the vase up before I start taping and just making sure that the lip of the vase is really dry so we can make sure this sticks nice and tight. Cool. So what I'm going to do is just do two this way, easy. So I've done that. I've just done 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm also just going to wrap a little bit of piece of tape around where the ends of the tape are folding over the vase. It just gives a little bit more security. I've done that the whole way around and I will be doing a front-facing design. That's why something like a Monstera is great because it'll cover the lip of the vase and we won't see any of this that's going on. This is all kind of behind the scenes of your design. Your focal flower kind of just whichever is the star of the show will be my anthurium. So that's going to kind of be tall and center. And then my orchids are going to kind of be coming out in here and my snaps nice and tall at the side here. And then we'll have this gorgeous palm kind of flopping over the side here, and then a lovely Monstera at the front. I'm analyzing my pieces of my snap stems. Some are bigger, some are smaller. So this is kind of the hero stem that's going to kind of be nice and centered in the back. When you're deciding how much to cut off, I've actually seen people do it this way where they flip it however tall they want it to be, they cut it. That's a little method that I've seen. But I like to have the vase on the edge of wherever I'm working, measure like that, and then trim on an angle. So when I put my stem through one of the gaps in between the tape, it'll just kind of stay there. And that makes life easy with the tape. And you can put multiple stems into the one gap, especially if you're working with a vase that has a wider neck compared to the amount of flowers that you have, just create some nice structure. And when I'm deciding which direction to put my snaps, I kind of like them all going in the same direction. They'll all have a lean to them naturally. Even after they've been cut, they'll seek out the light. That's natural, baby. Don't worry. And to make my life easier, you can go through and cut off all the little nodules that were attached that had the foliage coming off, just to make it easier to pass through. And if I do want to pull something out and put it back in, it's not going to get caught on the tape. It's just nice and smooth. I love when snaps do this because it just creates a really cool effect in the vase. So this one's going to be kind of hanging out on the side like this. So this is kind of the shape that I've landed on. And then we're going to start putting in my orchids. And like I said, with how they can have a refresh, if over the course of the week or the 2 weeks that you're enjoying your beautiful arrangement, you can always pop these out if they're starting to droop a little, put them in a water bath and then place them back in. Once you do that, they really do perk back up and they have even longer life, which is fabulous. A little trim. What I want to do is kind of angle them this way to create some balance with the snaps that I have over here. And I'm going to achieve that because these have a really nice flop to them. My thoughts on the design is that these are going to lay like this and then have the beautiful backing of the palm. So that's the kind of angle that I'm wanting to achieve. And these are going to be hanging out over the side like this. So I've popped my orchids in and my palm over here, and I'm just kind of turning the orchids to make sure that they're all front facing. They do prefer a side. Same thing with the snaps actually. Sometimes these ones are pretty 360, but sometimes you'll be looking at the snap and all of the blooms are pretty much on one side. And if that's the case, then just make that your front facing. So I want to create a little bit of negative space up here. I just like that look when it comes to a bit more of an asymmetrical design, having a little bit of negative space so you can really see these little buds. Alrighty, this is where we're at. When I was putting in these 2 flowers, I was just keeping in mind that I'm going to be popping in my anthurium later, and I want it to kind of be in the top, up high in the center. So I left a little bit of a gap, and I'm going to keep the stem quite long. So I put it in, but now see how it's kind of just almost like parallel to your eye? If I give it a spin, you can see that it angles down this way. Spin it around until you can see the most of the anthurium from the front. And now that that's in there, I'm actually just going to grab this little guy. I've just popped one out just so that I can make sure that it isn't being completely hidden behind the lovely anthurium. If anything pops off, that's all right. You can actually fill up like a glass of water and you just let it float in there and it'll stay alive, and it's quite pretty. I've decided that this was just cramping my style. I think the 1 is really all that's needed because I want it to flop really nicely. And this is just getting a little bit busy for my liking. So pop that in a vase too. So you can see this is kind of where we're at with our Snapdragon little wave, and then our Singapore orchids climbing over on the side, and then our beautiful palm, and then the anthurium doing its thing in the middle. A lovely finishing touch is going to be our Monstera that's just going to create a little goatee in the front. Alrighty, so I'm all done. And I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a tropical version of Flower Club today. You can imagine you're in Fiji, Tahiti, wherever you want to be. And you can be there sunning it up, making this beautiful design. And I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful week. Bye everyone!